welcome to a new episode of the Shaken and Stirred Show. I'm Nigel Barker, feeling like Muhammad Ali in New York City. I'm about to go head to head with a boxing legend. Well, she's becoming one very, very quickly. She's actually far too cute to be a boxing anything, quite frankly. But we're going to get there. This week, guys, we are going down under with Australian actress best known for her roles in the Australian television series Neighbours that I grew up with, and she's probably sick of talking about, actually, because, you know, I imagine it's one of those shows, a bit like America's Next Top Model that I grew up with, that, I don't want to hear about it anymore. But we're going to go there. You know her in Trauma Centre from last year. She's also had roles in Scrubs, Halloween 2, Hall Pass, The Wedding, Ringer, and Workaholics. Her next project will be the new action movie Hounds of War. Please welcome Nicky Whelan. Nicky, how are you?
Nigel, you have me drinking very early in the day.
This is what I love. Welcome to the Shaken and Stirred Show. What are you drinking?
Okay, I love that. Usually I don't start for at least another 3 hours. I have a margarita here, which is my new drink over the last couple of years. I've just started getting into them.
First of all, it's my new drink that I've only been drinking for the past couple of years. Did you hear that, people? So when was the last time you told someone that it was a new drink from the last couple of years? That is in itself.
Let me explain myself. So here's the thing. For a long time, I'm an Aussie, so we're all expected to be huge drinkers all the time. But for a big chunk of my life, for no other reason other than I was just so busy and so sort of focused on work, I didn't drink for about 10 years. So when the pandemic kicked in, a very dear friend of mine got me started on margaritas. And I was like, where have I been like this whole time? And so when I say this is new, is because in the last couple of weeks, I've flipped it to spicy margarita. And you might be able to help me because the restaurant I eat at and drink at, they give me this little jar of is this called trink? The thing that makes it spicy, what's it called? Trink.
There are various different things you can put in a spicy margarita to make it spicy. Normally, it's actually just a pepper. It's actually just the actual, chili, like a habanero.
They have this little thing and they give me a tiny glass of it, and I've just been testing on how spicy I can go because I always went really sweet and now I've gone really spicy and I'm really stepping up in the world.
What they do is they actually make the simple syrup, and when you're making the simple syrup, you put the peppers in, the habanero peppers, directly into the simple syrup as you're boiling it down, and then you let it sit in there. And so what happens is it actually infuses. So when you add the simple syrup to the margarita, which essentially is triple sec or a Cointreau or a Grand Marnier, with your tequila and your fresh lime juice, and then you put that simple syrup in, that's what gives it that kick, right? So there you go. And so that is a spicy margarita. And there are, again, I said there are different ways to do it. Some people put spicy salt on the outside. Some people actually float sort of the chilies in the drink itself, but it's more decorative than anything. If you want that flavor and that hit, it comes from that infusion in the actual simple syrup. But you can make it yourself.
I love this. Well, they do it so beautifully here and they have it down pat. And look, I've got all my little systems around me and it's like a whole production here they set up for me. But now I know the information. It sounds a little tricky, but I'll give it a crack. But yeah.
No, and by the way, the concept that you stopped drinking when you came from Australia to America is a disastrous concept. I mean, you realize that you clearly went to the wrong side of the US. You shouldn't come to New York. And I know it wouldn't be as pretty. You wouldn't have palm trees behind you and all the rest of it. But guys, for those of you who aren't watching this on YouTube and you're actually listening to this as a podcast, and by the way, you can watch this on YouTube, I'm looking at Nikki right now, and whilst I am sitting in my office in New York looking at snow outside the window and trying to be sunny wearing a t-shirt that says Muhammad Ali on it, Nikki is doing the opposite. Classic LA, she's wearing a sweater which goes all the way up to her neck, and so she's wrapped up as if she's chilly, yet meanwhile the sun is shining, it's beautiful and warm, all the plants are green. So now you have a real visual of what's going on here. The dichotomy of a New Yorker trying to look like he's cool and an LA person trying to look like they're cold, which are all cool, either way.
Well, listen, us LA folk, I've been here nearly 16 years and I've become so fragile that even a hint of cool wind and the sweaters and the turtlenecks come on. Like, I have become such a baby. I used to, because I grew up in Australia. So, like, you have the 4 seasons, solid 4 seasons. You get freezing cold like New York in Australia. So here, but being here so long, I'm so used to the sun, literally a hint of cold. And I'm like, So I'd
No,
love.
I know. I've done my moments in LA. I go over there and I see people in the sort of the hottest days wearing UGG boots with a fur lining, and I'm like, excuse me, so you're wearing a mini skirt, bare legs, and then you've got your sweaty feet in an UGG. I'm like, really? Is that what we're going to do? Is that style? But I'm like, hey, I'm in LA. I'm going to leave it alone. I'm not going to do the whole fashion police moment. I'm not going to go there. But listen, I'm digressing here because I also have a cocktail. Normally, I try to find out what my guest is drinking so I can sort of match it and pair. But what I did this time, because you didn't tell me I didn't find out at least what you were drinking until the last minute. But I decided to do my little bit of research, and it was worthwhile. I discovered, and for all of you out there, I have been drinking this cocktail for, I don't know, better part of 20 years, and I had no idea of its origins. What does this look like to you, Nikki? If you were
It
to
looks
describe this.
like a martini with a lemon slice on top.
A martini with a twist, right? Is what we call that with the lemon. And it is, in fact, known as a kangaroo. Oh, yeah, this is the original name was the
What?
kangaroo. Apparently, in 1948, the very first vodka martini was created in Sydney, Australia, and nicknamed the kangaroo. Prior to that, they were gin martinis and gin mix martinis. So it was gin and vodka, but people hadn't really coined the classic dry martini, which is vermouth, vodka, and a twist of lemon. And it was in 1948 that a bartender named it the kangaroo. And there's quotations on it. So I had no idea. So although it is just a dry martini, today I'm calling it a kangaroo in honor of its origins and, of course, of you.
I was
Cheers.
say how appropriate. Cheers, Nigel. I've got to say, my mum's English. You're obviously from England, yeah?
Actually, I'm from 8 Mile in Detroit, but I thought for my television career it'd be way better to have an English accent. And it turned out it was the perfect cocktail because there isn't a judging panel in America that doesn't have a dash of English in it.
Well, I'm just saying your
No,
accent
I'm
makes
from Chelsea, London. Sorry, love. I'm being
I love
facetious.
it. Just it's home for me because half my family are from England or Manchester. So your accent is very. I just miss it. I just miss all the accents. I'm surrounded by a lot of American accents. So.
Nikki, I am right here for you. No need to miss anything at all. I'm literally just, here on this Zoom, you and I. And meanwhile, people, as we have this little love fest about our accents on the phone, I am also, half of my family is from Australia, and they live in Sydney. So they moved over in the 60s, and yes, from my father's side. And so I have a whole bunch of cousins who are over there. And so whenever I've been over, which we shot a whole season of America's Next Top Model over in Sydney, it was a lot of fun. I actually wrote one of my books, actually a book I have right here with my face on the cover, the Nigel Barker Beauty Equation. This was written in Sydney. So all of you who know my book about beauty, I was inspired by the beauty of Sydney and the people of Sydney, like yourself.
Oh, I did not know this. I love it. You got some Aussie in you. See, we're family.
Well, I do have some Aussie in me, although I do believe it's the other way around. Aussies have English in them. I'm not sure that it's the other, that English people consider themselves to have Aussie in them, but that's okay. I'm sort of a mixed blood anyway. I'm not a classic Englishman, and I'll take it. Look, I want to go on. You've got an extraordinary career already. You've done a lot of different things, but you started with a show that's a classic, the Australian television series Neighbours. And I want to touch on it only because for me personally, a lot of Americans may not know of this show. It's not a big show, perhaps in the States, but in England, Neighbours is a huge show. And it was, if you know Dallas, if you know Dynasty in the US, it was like that in England. People didn't miss an episode. A lot of the cast of Neighbours, if they're going to go anywhere, don't necessarily head to the US, they head to the UK because it's such a big show there that they're guaranteed to become quite a well-known star. Like Kylie Minogue, for example, who was really a regular on Neighbours for years, right? Pre your time.
Well, speaking of Kylie Minogue, it's funny you bring that up because Benji Hart joined at the same time as me, and he's an English actor. He was on a show over there. I can't remember what it's called, but basically Benji and I were brought onto Neighbours. I'm going back maybe 15 years now to sort of bring back the Kylie Minogue and Jason Donovan kind of vibe. So it's funny you say that. Our two characters were brought on to kind of start that whole thing up again and be, the couple on Neighbours. And it is, I'm so glad you bring it up, and I'm happy to talk about it because I grew up with Neighbours. So, I'm watching at 9 years old, Paul Robinson, remember Paul Robinson, who's one of the characters. I was a little 9-year-old girl watching it. I'm so obsessed with this show. Cut to, 20 years later, I'm his girlfriend on the show. It's so crazy. So to me, and I'd had no acting experience. And Jan Russ, the casting director, who's been their casting director forever, she's a dreamboat, put me in this with absolutely no experience. And it was the most surreal experience for that year that I was there. I was actually supposed to do 3 years, but I cut my contract early to come to the US. But I still love Neighbours. I love talking about it. I get it. And it's huge in England. Like, as soon as I finished, I actually went to England for a couple of months to visit some friends. I was walking down the street and people were like, Peppa! And I'm like, it's a thing. Like, people, I was really, I don't know, because I got to the US and no one knew anything about it. Everyone's like, huh? But I got so much love in the UK.
Oh yeah, no. I mean, clearly, that's what I'm saying. You shouldn't have gone to LA. You probably should have gone to the UK and then come over here. But but you would have got stuck over there. They wouldn't have let you go. We love a good Neighbours star, and you can pretty much do anything. If you come from Neighbours, you have carte blanche in the UK to become a singer, to become an actress, to brand ambassador, create your own lines, do whatever you want. Actually, we will buy anything that you say or want to talk about. And we're sort of obsessed with Aussies in the UK as well. So I think everyone is everywhere. But I want to talk a little bit first before we leave the Neighbours concept. You mentioned how you got this gig really sort of without really doing too much, and you were sort of accepted right into this role. Now, did you always want to be an actor? Is this something that was, had you trained in any shape or form?
Randomly, and we can all laugh together at this one. When I was 17, I started hosting horse racing, which is huge, one of the biggest sports in Australia. I was a TV host. I got thrown into that with no experience. My dad used to gamble a lot, so he would tell me how to read the paper and how to gamble and how to bet. And I was doing a little bit of modelling at the time, and they threw me into this role of hosting sports. And then I was doing football and all these hosting shows. And I was like, I want to be an actress. That's all I want to do. I was a dancer and I just wanted to act. And I constantly kept being given these roles to host TV shows, similar to what you've done, and with zero experience. And then I ended up commentating the K1 kickboxing for about 7 years. I mean, I'm winging it. By the way, all of this winging it. I've got no idea what I'm doing. They're just hiring me, and I did a travel show for 2 years and swam with sharks and bungee jumping. I mean, and the whole time I'm just saying to my team, I just want to be an actress. And they're like, no, Nick, and filled me up for years with presenting. And then there was this audition that came up for Neighbours, and I was like, so I got the opportunity to audition for it, but I'd never done an acting class in my life. I was just so wanting to be an actress. And I went in and gave it my all. Again, no idea what I'm doing. And I'm walking onto set on my first day with Ben Lawson, who just finished NIDA, one of the greatest acting schools in the country. And then there's me, TV host, just coming along. I mean, it was... I think I willed it.
What did you do? Did you go for that casting and just read the newspaper, the horse results, really, really well? And they were like, oh my God, she's brilliant. I've never heard anyone read the newspaper like that before.
Learned my lines, and I'd been obsessed with acting, and I learned my lines, and I don't know what happened. And then boom, I'm all of a sudden onto this incredible show that's been going at that time for like 30 years. I'm surrounded by a bunch of people who very warm and welcoming, and then you just jump on the engine, you just go. And it was probably the greatest way to start my career, because, you're shooting 5-6 days a week, 10 scenes a day. I mean, the dialogue's huge, the big fuss of my character. I mean, I got thrown in, but back then, I don't know, I just was so much more ballsier probably than I am now. And I was like, yep, I got this, and it's that youth, it's that excitement. And it all came together. So I just think I put it so hard into the universe, it somehow found its way back to me.
Well, and I believe in that 100%. I mean, I think if you can imagine it, you can half the time make it come true. If you've got a dream, in order to have a dream, right? But I think it's funny though, because you sort of alluded to your co-star who had come from this top acting school. Is there, a stigma attached to sort of being an actor who perhaps hasn't been to a great acting school, or hasn't, and I know, every country has the same sort of similar things, similar acting schools which are great to go to, and, whether it's St. Martin's or whatever it might be, somewhere, and it's the same in the fashion industry. Where did you go? I went to Parsons, or I went to FIT, and if you didn't, then, you just decided to design. I mean, why shouldn't you decide to design, and why shouldn't you desire to act? But I guess there is that idea of, did you know how to? I mean, were you a method actor? How did you get into role,
This
character?
Well, the character was this bubbly, and in my 20s, I was very much like my character, super bubbly. I basically just read it as me. Like I just kind of came in as me and read it as me and bounced around and did whatever the audition was. I think there was a little bit of tension when I first got there. People were like, "She's a TV host." She said, there was that kind of like,
Mm.
maybe just because she's done modeling. There's always going to be that, no matter where you go and what you do and where did you study and what did you do. Listen, I got in, and yes, it was, and to people that have been studying acting for years, but I'd also been bloody hosting for fucking, for 7 years. I'd been in front of a camera, mate, since I was 17. Of course, it's a very, very different thing to acting, but I don't know. I kind of overlook a lot of that. I felt that there was a bit of that when I was there. There was a bit of it over here when I got here as well. But I don't know, just like, fuck, I'm in it to win it. I'm giving it a crack like everybody else. So
No, look, 100%. There's a
yeah.
sense. I mean, this whole concept of sort of imposter syndrome. I mean, it's one of those things where and you hear it over and over again, and I myself have suffered from it. Where I had been. You mentioned when you are a model, it's people are they love you because you were a model, but they hate you because you were a model. Right. So there's an aspect of, this person, has it all. How can they also be perhaps talented in this other thing? And so that upsets them that you might be able to step into a role and that you've clearly gotten it because of your looks or something like that. And which, therefore you have to fight a little bit harder to prove yourself or do something and to sort of change it all up. I remember trying to become a photographer initially, and I actually left. Similarly, I left the UK, I left France and Milan, which is where I had worked as a model in the late 80s, mid 90s, and came to the US.
I saw your photos.
Oh, a little bit of stalking. I like that.
I dug deep into the Instagram. I'm sorry, but go on. I did see them. Bloody gorgeous.
Well, I wondered why it was. There's a little bit of a wait when I asked you to come onto this podcast. You were clearly like saying, "Wait a second, let me just check." And who is this Nigel Barker sliding into my DMs? But I'm glad it all worked out in the end. You might have seen some of my pictures actually that I shot in Australia. There's a couple of great Australian photographers.
Saw some bloody beautiful shots though. I dug deep. I went down the Instagram. I was like, Nigel banging shots. There were some good ones.
As I said, guys, I'm sorry. You're going to have to excuse the two of us right now. We're having a moment. Okay. So just have a sip of your drink, go and make another one or something like that, and come back in a moment. No, Nikki, I like that. I appreciate that. But it's a long time ago. I mean, this is back when, I was, again, late 80s until mid 90s. A different era, different moment. But my point being that I understand where you're coming from. And there is this sort of, especially, and I know in the acting business, because a lot of models do try and move over and become actors. And it can be tough for them. And they can be, sort of laughed at. And this can go on for even after they've proved themselves,
constant battle, and you see it all the time here. And last year I turned 40, and I personally am in a really different part of my life. I'm in a very different stage of my life, and I still get roles sent to me to sort of play that girl. I did a movie called Hall Pass years ago, a comedy with the Farrelly brothers with Owen Wilson in it. Great movie. But I play that girl, the girl next door, the one that comes in and has the little fling with Owen. And so much of my career, I remember testing for, I tested for Mystique against Jennifer Lawrence in X-Men, and I was Transformers. I was always up, and it was funny because Transformer movies, they were putting Rosie Huntington and that in it. So all of a sudden, at that stage, I was established as an actress, but I was being thrown in against beautiful, stunning models up against roles. So I got thrown around back and forth up against models they're not. And funnily enough, I did the Nespresso campaign a couple of years ago with George Clooney. You know how he does the Nespresso deal? Yeah. And the audition for that was hysterical. My agent rang me and said, there's an audition for a commercial now. It's not something you usually go out for, but you want to give it a crack? And I was like, hey. I get there, Nigel, and the corridor is the most beautiful 6-foot stunning supermodels in LA. And I was like, And I rang her and I said, I don't think this is right. I don't think I'm supposed to be here. Like, this is not really, this is like, this is the most beautiful women. And she goes, no, just give it a crack and go in there. And I was like, I just got to, I mean, I dressed like an actor. I hadn't dressed all modelly. So I went in and the director was taking the audition, a lovely man. And I sort of came in, I was laughing and I'm like, all right, well, let's, and he goes, hang on. He goes, you're Australian. And I was like, yeah. And I'm also 5'4". He said, I don't know if I'm supposed to do this. And when I read it with him, it was very conversational. And he kind of looked at me and goes, yeah. He goes, I like this. It's very, there's something very real about it. I walk out, don't even think about it. All as I see is just a line of these stunning women. I'm gone. A month later, they rang and I got the job and flew off to Italy and did the gig. And again, I was surrounded by a bunch of supermodels on set, but I was the main girl with Jack Black and George Clooney. It was a great experience. But I remember speaking with the director. I'm like, why? And he goes, because you just were very natural about the process. And so in that regard, it helped having, do you know what I mean? I was sort of looked at.
100%. I actually thought you were going to say it was what George Clooney was casting for a wife or something like that. And this is what, all under the pretense that, he was going to be a coffee commercial. But hey, I like that. I mean, look, why not? And quite frankly, you can't tell how tall someone is on television.
You can't. But it was just that moment where they had really gone with the performance as opposed to the looks in something. And so my whole career, and you know this, it's sort of, you're trying to fight against it or try to fight against that sort of image and that look. And like I said, I'm 40 now and it's hard to place me in roles now. It's a very interesting time in my life and a really interesting transition. I'm glad COVID happened. So I've had a couple of years trying to find myself. And because I want to go into a different phase of my career and I'm still getting auditions for Playboy bunnies and bits and the hot chicken stuff. And I'm like, give it a fucking rest, guys. Like, I'm flattered, but there's fucking 10 million of them here under 35, so it's this whole, it's just, you got to break out. You got to constantly reinvent yourself, which I know you know about, like different chapters of your life. And I do believe there is a little bit more of a challenge to it. You know what I'm saying?
No, you said a whole bunch of things there that threw me for a loop. I've never heard anyone say they were happy for COVID and put Playboy in the same sentence. That in itself is something of a miracle. And I was like trying to fathom the whole thing. But then I was like, I understand. I too have had guilty pleasures around the fact that I've had some time off during COVID. I don't like to admit it, but it's true. It's quite nice to have a quiet downtime. But there was nobody asking me to be a Playboy bunny or having anything to do with any of that at the very same time, which is in itself extraordinary. But this is a serious topic, though, the concept of, and I'm totally down with this because, my wife is 47. She's just about to do her first, well, not her first, it's a new show. She's done 2 shows in the past where she's hosted, and she has a brand new show. But it's been a hiatus of about 15 years for her working on television in any shape or form. And she got a brand new show. But it is difficult and perhaps it's unusual time for women on television when they're in their 40s and 50s, right? It's what role do you fill? And someone like yourself, you say you're 40, but you could read as if you're 30 for sure, as if not younger than that. So is that something you have to address? Is it something that you have to sort of think about? And how does your agent handle that?
Well, it's funny because there was something, I spoke to my agent the other day, exactly what you said. And he said, there is something out there at the moment, but it's actually, they're asking for 30-year-olds. And he said, so I can't send you in because you're not 30, but you do play 30 a lot. So we're just going to have to wait and see what happens. So it's just, I don't know, a lot of the stuff I do is direct offers from people I've worked for before. That's how a lot of this sort of works. I do find it hard to be placed in auditions at the moment. And someone's like, there's this great role for a 40-year-old woman. She's had 4 kids and da, da, da. And I'm like, great. And they're like, no. And I'm like, oh. And I'm like, but so and there's also that thing of like, you want to take care of yourself. You don't want to beat yourself up just so that do you know what I'm saying? You don't want to beat yourself up so that because in my day-to-day life, I train, I look after myself. I want to be healthy and look fresh and stay young. We all want to stay young, but this kind of goes against you in the business. And it's kind of, so I really try and find roles that throw me out of this sort of image that was created for me in my younger years. And it's just, it's just a matter of sort of finding the right place. And it's gonna take time and it's going to be a challenge. But this is what I do. This is what I've always done. And it's just a challenge. It's just a new thing I've got to throw myself into and I've got to lean into. my age and kind of this weird transition and kind of just see what comes of it. You know, I've got good staying power. I'm pretty resilient. I've been fucking living in LA for 16 years.
Like I said again, it's high time you move to New York, is all I can say.
Funny
We're
you
far
say.
more serious over here. We don't care about your age. We're not all sort of superficial and all the rest of it over here in New York. We're all about, just age is nothing but a number. And we are, I like to say, first of all, you look sensational. You look amazing. I also follow you on Instagram. We have mutual friends. I actually called up one of our mutual friends last night to spy on you a little bit, but he wouldn't give me very much ammunition. A guy called Oliver Trevina, who absolute doll, and what have you. And Oliver's been a guest on this show and has been a friend of mine for years. But he's
Ollie,
someone too, Oliver, right? Yeah, no, he's a great guy, and he's sort of he's someone who, another actor, and who's talked about as well about what it's like to sort of grow up in Hollywood and and your age start to become an issue or become a factor or become a sort of something that you have to deal with. It's not just, can I act? Am I right for this role? Can I do this role? Can I act this role? Right? Because we all know that half the time when you see a teenager on television, they're actually being played by a sort of 20-something. And likewise, and yet for some odd reason, when you are sort of female and you hit 40, 50, yet if you look 20, 30, you could not allowed to act it. You sort of somehow there's a change there. Do you think that's connected to the male parts of the in the cast, or is it just societal?
I don't know. I think, listen, it's and I know that we've all said this, it's a great time for women. And some of these roles, I just watched this fantastic series on Amazon with Rose, what's her name? English actor, her, Rose, she was in fantastic. Oh my God, I've lost her name. But,
What's she in?
What's that?
What show is she in?
Now I can't, The Wheel of Life it's called.
Okay.
It is, and anyway, all the women in this are these fantastic kick-ass kind of, there's a time in this world where the women sort of have got these incredible powers and they're really zoned in on this another level of power that I do believe women have. And all of these women in this TV show, majority of them are all over 40 and into their 50s as the lead women, and they're these powerhouses on horses and kicking ass, and they're all in their 40s and 50s. And I just think it's such a great time. That's what I'm saying. I'm trying to embrace sort of more of that, and just, it doesn't matter what age you are. Like, I'm the same as you. I don't give a fuck that I'm 40, but it's the other people that sort of trip on it. But there are this great team of people out here that are creating content and saying, yeah, I want to look at J-Lo, however old she's, over 50. I mean, she's doing backflips and splits and bloody woo. I mean, it's just creating a space to let everybody know that it doesn't fucking matter how old you are. You can just make it happen for yourself. And especially for women in a world where, society has always sort of been like, well, she's a little older now. Bullshit.
Are you familiar with the supermodel Paulina Poroskova? So Paulina Poroskova, who has been recently creating waves in the fashion industry and in various different, magazines recently, where she's posed naked multiple times, and has sort of been photographed in her bikini and all the rest of it. And she's clearly in her mid-50s. Now, she was my guest, or another judge rather. I was going to say guest judge, but she was actually a permanent judge on America's Next Top Model for many years. One of the most beautiful women in the world, probably ever. And she's someone who, I'm not going to go quietly. I'm going to, be proud, loud and proud, and be who I am and celebrate my body. And if I want to do a nude when I'm sort of mid-50s, I will, right? And that's what it is. And it's worked. And first of all, she's in the most extraordinary shape, as are you. But it's sort of, it doesn't even matter. It was like, rather, I'm me. I'm going to be happy to be me. And actually, that confidence is incredibly sexy. So, you can have a kick-ass body, but if you're not confident, you don't get it. You don't feel it in that person's personality and their charisma. But if someone is confident, is gung-ho, is compassionate to themselves, and not conceited, but loves themselves enough to say, you know what, I'm worth it, then that is very sexy, and that parlays on film, and people are like, wow, I want to be like her.
It was Rosamund Pike, the actress I'm thinking about, just because it just came to me as you were talking. And yeah, it is. I think it's and who knows what is the right body and what is the right image, and everybody likes different kind of sort of. I don't know, when we say everybody looks fit, or I just think it's such a time where we're opening up to not having to be so specific about how you should look and how you should be, and also being honest about, where people are at in their lives and their body images. It's funny, and I bring this up because I think it's important. And people comment a lot about it on my Instagram. People are like, you're so fit, you're so this, you're so that. And what they're not understanding is some of the craziest times in my life when I have been completely miserable, stressed out, underweight and undernourished is the times when people are going, you look fantastic. And I'm like, it's you know what I'm saying? Like, it's so funny how we all, and you look at these movie stars that are all buff and sexy and please don't. It's still important to sell it to everybody that this is not really what these people have access to all sorts of things. We're in the movies, like a lot of it's not real. A lot of the time when you see us looking at our best, trust me, behind closed doors, it's not great. It's like I said, some of my most painful times in my life where I've been really underweight and really stressed out. People have been like, you look fantastic. I'm like, it's not because I'm in the gym. It's because, you know what I'm saying? So I think there's this sort of misconception about really what goes on behind the scenes when people, and so going back to originally what we were talking about is it's the energy that you're carrying inside of you. It's that thing that you give out. It's like when you meet someone that may not have the perfect body, whatever that is, but they've got that yumminess in their eyes and they've got that sparkle, and you just walk in and go, what the fuck is it about that person? And they don't have to be an actor. You can be in a restaurant and a man or a woman can walk in and you're just like, what is it about that person? I think that's the yumminess of people, and that's what we need to sell more and find that in people. Do you know what I mean? Without being too preachy, but
No, I couldn't agree more. In fact, a friend of mine who's you will know because he's another Aussie, but the actor Hugh Jackman, someone who we all know him for many roles that he's played, but we all know him as Wolverine as well, as one of his main roles that really put him into the spotlight worldwide. And I trained with him at the time, surprisingly enough, when he was training to become Wolverine, and that's how we created the gym, the Dog Pound. Right, so the gym, the Dog Pound, was created by myself, Hugh Jackman, and a few other guys about 7 years ago. And whilst Hugh was training to be Wolverine, and I remember very well back then when in order to get to that shredded look that he became, it was because he stopped drinking water for several days in advance and basically dehydrated his body to a point of being almost so faint that he was going to collapse, and that he had to shoot those roles all together in one stage. All the roles where he took his shirt off, they're all ganged together. It doesn't matter if it appears in different stages in the movie, they shoot them all together in one day, in one moment. So that, and then as soon as it was done, he said, as soon as he finished his last moment where he was, ripped, he had a bottle of water on the side and he just picked it up and just poured it and drank and drank and drank. Because in order to create that look of complete shreddedness, you see, it was because his body was dehydrated, and forget that there's no fat, there was no water.
That's exactly what I'm saying. Do not be fooled on seeing someone shredded. I mean, there's a whole world of steroids. There's a whole world of that out there too that people are doing. Like, people don't just go to the gym and look like Wolverine, okay? Of course, there's an exercise, there's a diet. I know you did, Nigel, but you're like an extra special kind of human. So
I used to joke that I was his understudy, and that if anything ever happened, that I could be Wolverina.
Wolverine, God bless. But see, but it's important to always be honest about our process and what we're going through, and training and looking after yourself, and whatever you do to keep healthy, and however you get there. But let's not be fooled. Let's not be fooled. Let's sort of try and promote more of, the stuff that comes out of us, like the inside, the energy that we're carrying. Let's sort of work on that more. You know what I mean?
I do, but I want to get into the fact that you are a bit of a fitness freak, and I say freak, but you are someone who's constantly working out, boxing, fighting. I actually wore this T-shirt in honor of you today. Has Muhammad Ali on it, and on the back, I'm not sure if you can see it, but it says "float like a butterfly, sting like a bee," which is Muhammad Ali's favorite expression. But you go to Fortune Gym in LA, which is a great, fantastic gym, a legendary gym. What is it about boxing that you love so much?
Well, that's a Contenders t-shirt, I think. I think
It
I've got
is.
some. Yeah, I love it. Love their stuff. So my dad, he actually passed last year, but uh, he was a boxer, and he was just. I grew up around the fights. I grew up in the fights. I ended up hosting Let's All Laugh Together, the K1, for years. It was part of my life growing up. You know, being at the pub on a Friday night and all the men beating the shit out of each other and then all coming back in and having a drink. I was raised in that old school Aussie fights, the boxing, it was always on. There was always fights. I was always going to the fights. It was always just part of my upbringing. And I always loved and I was also a dancer. So between the physique of a boxer and the dancing for women, I love those body types. They're my favorite body types. So I stopped dancing when I was around 21 years old, and started sort of doing training, boxing as a training thing. And I just love, more than anything, I love the fitness, like the sort of training aspect of it. It's not, you'll never see me just waltzing into a gym and just doing squats. It'll never happen. I'm terrible with gym memberships. I don't know how to train myself. So I need sort of an activity, and boxing just is, I don't know what is it about it, and it exhausts me to a place where when you leave, there's this sort of, you've let everything out. I don't know, it's a very emotional sort of thing, but I know I seem like a fitness freak, Nigel, but I got to tell you, I'm not as fitnessy as I am all about moving and shaking, and I'm giving tennis a crack at the moment, which is just hysterical. I've got no idea what I'm doing, but I'm always about trying stuff. But I'm not a huge, like, if you see my daily diet and stuff, I mean, it's 2:00 in the afternoon, I'm having a margarita. Like, let's be honest about what's going on.
I do love an Aussie because you are, I mean, if nothing else, full on. And I think that's the great thing, is that you commit. And you've committed to the role of being on the Shaken and Stirred show with your spicy margarita at 3:00 in the afternoon, or whatever it is over there, 2:00 in the afternoon. But, boxing itself, training is one thing, but getting in the ring is another. Do you do actual contact boxing?
No, absolutely not. No. I only ever punch on the bags. But it's funny you say about getting in the ring, because the first time I went to Fortune, the girl who trains me there, Tam, she's Justin Fortune's wife. She's a badass, and I love fighting with her. There's something about hitting her pads. It's very different to when you're doing it with a man. I don't know. She's fantastic to work with. She goes, all right, let's jump in the ring. Let's go. And I was like, what? And she's like, no, let's jump in the ring. And I was like, I'm too embarrassed. There's all these people in the gym, and now all of a sudden we're in this ring, and the ring is it's like a performance place. Now it's just, that's what I love about Fortune. There's no bullshit there. It's just a legit, everyone's just working their asses off. The first few times I stood in that ring, just because I didn't know the right form and this and that. And she goes, you got to fucking let it go. And it's a whole situation when you step inside a ring. And I've sat ringside by hundreds of fights, and you see, and I used to interview a lot of fighters in the K1 and stuff, and talk to them. I remember going, like, do you ever have moments when you're in the middle of that ring and you're like, fuck, there's like 20,000 people standing around me? It's not just the fight and meditation of staying in the moment and everything that goes with that. It's also taking on the energy of thousands of people. There is something very, I don't know, it's such a bold,
Primal.
fierce, it's like this, primal, like, fuck, you have some balls to get in that ring. Like, there is something
But
about
isn't
it.
that also there where, and again, talking about someone like Hugh Jackman, one of the things he loves to do is go on stage. It's not just acting for a camera, but he loves to go on stage and act in front of an audience, right? And do his one-man acts and do the Man from Oz and do whatever he's doing. But is there not something within your bones too, perhaps? And if you're a singer or a musician or a rock star, you're getting up in front of an audience that could be 10,000 people, could be more, and that there is something incredibly exhilarating. I mean, I've never done anything like that. The biggest thing I personally have done is like go to like a CES conference in Vegas and talk to like 10,000 wedding photographers. Trust me, it's quite the same, but it has its moments. But even that was exhilarating. I was like, wow, man, look at all these people here who are, because there is the power and the energy of a lot of people focused on you. And that is that you almost sort of take their life energy away. It's almost like you're sucking up all that energy, both negative and positive. If they love you, if they hate you, and it's incredibly powerful, right?
Well, it's an unnatural state for a human to absorb. It's like rock stars and stuff like that. They're in this space of an unnatural amount of power and energy coming out of them, coming toward them. And how we manage that is really everything. That's the magic of how you hold the space of that huge amount of sort of frequency hitting you, and how you sort of can hold the space of that. I don't know. It's funny, you put me in an audition room before COVID, you'd have to go into auditions here out in LA. I will fall apart in an audition room with 3 people. I will absolutely just no idea what I'm doing. But when I used to host, put me on a stage at the MCG in front of 120,000 people live on TV. And I'm like, hey, everyone, what's going on? It's the weirdest thing. We all have I find the intimacy of a room of 3 or 4 people so much more frightening than a crowd of 120,000 people. Can't explain it to you. I don't know what it is, but I'm shittier in smaller spaces, and it's different for everybody. But yeah, that's what I'm saying.
I don't think that's unusual though. You hear, especially in the acting world, of a lot of actors being introverts, and that they are actually quite quiet, and they like their own company, and sort of somewhat solitary, and not necessarily big party people, and yet they choose to perform for a living, which is essentially getting up in front of people, or at least performing for lots of the world to look at you and see you, right? But there's something about that where it is a safe place in a way. It's like you take on a character, or you take on a personality, or you can kind of like, it's so many people that you're able to tune out. But when you put them one-on-one, or in a small group setting, they can be quite awkward. And
what gets you, like, if you don't mind me asking, what gives you butterflies? Like, what gets you nervous at this stage in your career? What do you go, that feeling that what is there anything in your career still, or your world, that gives you that?
The funny thing is that, and I love the fact you've turned this interview on me, but anyway, I will answer your question because you asked it so nicely. But it is the fact that I think it's very important to have nerves. So I have said to people many times in the past when I've spoken about this, is that if you don't have nerves, the moment you stop having nerves is probably the time you should probably stop doing what you're doing, because it's called being human. Why on earth would you not have nerves if you get up in front of a lot of people? Why would you not have nerves if you're public speaking? Why would you not have, even before podcast, I get nervous, but not in a way that necessarily is bad. I embrace them. And I tell people who step in front of my camera too, that if they're nervous about being photographed, or being photographed by me, or being photographed in general, that's not a problem. And in fact, that emotion itself is something that can be sort of taken and used, and it's sort of viable. It's an actual thing. The biggest problem you have is when someone steps in front of your camera and is not emotional, and doesn't feel, and they're not there, they're not present, because they're either so blasé, or they've done it a million times that they don't care. They're so sort of overly confident that they're just like, take it or leave it. There's no sex appeal in that. There's no charm in that. So I always say that to come on and have that little edge of, am I going to do this? Am I going to screw it up? Am I going to, what am I going to say? What am I going to do? Am I going to win? Am I going to lose? Am I loud enough? Am I quiet enough? Am I doing it right? Do they love me? Do they hate me? It all kind of is a part of that emotional. And it's like, and when you get that rush of perhaps nerves, I always think to myself, that is, I'm alive. I'm here. I'm present.
As a photographer, and I remember doing photo shoots, and I shoot a lot when I go home with a girlfriend of mine, and it's true that, you can sort of stand in front of a camera, and models tend to have that kind of, I know, but there's nothing more beautiful than, and that's why a lot of our happy snaps are a lot nicer than a photo shoot, only because those moments where you catch someone, I don't know, just in their realness, that's the beauty about photography, is it'll snatch those moments, and you look back at them and go, is that what I look like when I'm really laughing? And everyone will be like, it's beautiful. Like it reads that extra bit of yumminess. So you're right. I do agree with you, having the nerves, or having sort of that realness of like, fuck, I don't know what's going to happen. A little bit of shakes or something like that. There's some magic in it, because it's very, very real. I get such bad anxiety that my whole body will shake sometimes, and that will happen. Like even if I'm on a date, sometimes I can get really nervous, and I'm like, this is who you are. You've kind of got to embrace it. There's something very beautiful about it. Do you know what I mean? There's something very real, and you can connect to people that have that. It may look messy or awkward, but there's something really, really beautiful about it.
I 100% agree. I mean, that is the key to staying real and authentic and believable, is to be in touch with yourself and to let it go, and to be okay with the fact that you might be nervous here, you might be confident there, you might, these are all just real emotions, and the moment that's over, it's over, right? But look, you mentioned going on a date, and I know that your sort of true love is a French bulldog. No, you have a very cute little bulldog that and I've seen that you've done a lot of little things to sort of help dogs and to help support dogs and animals. What's the name of your French bulldog?
Would you like to see him? He's been patiently sitting down here by me the entire time.
Oh my God, look! What's
Yoda?
his name?
Yoda! Hey, wait. Yoda. His name is Yoda. And he's a bit fed up with me. Hi, babe. He is I'm a huge Star Wars fan. He is my little buddy that has been with me now for 9 years. He's just my buddy. Like, he goes everywhere with me. He's not on a lead. He's been trained. He's literally like a human. And everyone that knows that's close in my life knows that everywhere I go, if the restaurant lets them in, he's with me. He is my little miniature lifeline. I haven't got children, and I'm not married, and sort of I live a very gypsy kind of life. So I had to, I wanted to build something, have a little comfort. So he's my buddy. He can pretty much go everywhere except overseas with me. So it's my family.
Yoda, what a great name too. And by the way, I love it. You say he's trained. He doesn't need to be on a leash. Yoda is 9 years old and is a French bulldog sitting on a chair. He can't exactly go anywhere because he's too small to leap off without hurting himself, for God's sake. Yoda, I love you. Look at him. He's very elegant, and he's looking in the opposite direction saying, I'm not talking to you.
He is a absolute snob. He'll be like, He's just, this dog, you don't understand. In my little world, he's a very famous little dog. Like, he just goes everywhere. He knows all, from the cleaners to the restaurants we go to. He knows the way in to where I get coffee every morning. I mean, I'm a huge, huge, huge animal lover. And I've got more into that since I've been in LA, definitely, instead of more into the animal stuff. But yeah.
I'm a big animal lover myself. I've got rescues and rescue cats and rescue dogs. We even have a 4-foot iguana. And
I don't know this. Did you put the iguana on the Instagram? I haven't seen that.
Oh, yeah. So his name is Rocky, and he makes an appearance at least sort of a couple of times. Not that often, 2 or 3 times a year. Rocky makes a rather major appearance. And he's actually had his own photo shoot in a studio before too. So he's quite the star.
I love it. Yeah. So the animals are sort of, with this kind of lifestyle, it's hard to, as I'm sure you know, to sort of maintain especially for me, I'm constantly on the road. So he's awesome. He jumps everywhere with me.
You mentioned that you can't take him abroad. You recently went back to Australia, correct?
I did, yeah, which is the first time in 2 years. This COVID thing, it's kind of screwed with everybody in different ways and different levels. I go home 2 or 3 times a year. I'm very close with my family. I'm on Skype to my mum every day. I said Skype, which is so 1990, but, FaceTime. And, I love my family, and to not see them for 2 years, and then to, without getting too heavy, to lose my father in Australia. It wasn't COVID. He had other problems. But to not be able to get home and get into the country and say goodbye to him, it was all done on FaceTime. I mean, it's just been brutal. So this trip was a really important trip to go home and sort of, sort of see people, my family I hadn't seen for 2 years. So Australia's a little bit behind with the COVID stuff. They're only just let people out. They'd only just opened the borders, and it's kind of a bit of a shit show over there. They've kind of got that. Remember in our first 6 months of COVID, it was like we were all panicking and freaking out. They're still sort of doing that now. Do you know what I mean? Because they've let everybody out. So it's the Aussie vibe. I didn't feel it as much this time. It's a lot of paranoid, a lot of understandably, but there's a lot of tension with this COVID. It's sort of it was a weird trip home, to be honest with you. It was great to see everyone, but it was a tough one.
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt. I mean, in many respects, Australia seemed to be a perfect example of how to do things right in COVID for a while there, and then it seems to have gone all downhill recently. And obviously, with the tennis player not being allowed in and what have you, that seemed to be really poorly handled on many fronts, and almost a bit embarrassing for Australia if not for him.
They've made some decisions down there that is sort of backfiring on them. And look, I don't think we're in a society that anyone's been prepared for a pandemic. I don't think everyone was doing as best as they thought they knew in their country, their state, their territory, wherever they were. People have been handling it as best as they know how. But Australia have made some very interesting decisions, and the world is kind of laughing at a lot of the stuff they're doing down there. And when you're down there in the country with the people, the first 4 days I was home, the government calls you like every day to make sure that you're isolating for the first 4 days. And one morning I had 4 phone calls, and I was like, you guys have already called me. Oh, we have? I mean, it's a shit show. Like it really is. And I spent Christmas morning in a line getting my COVID test, because I flew out the day after Christmas, for 3.5 hours to get my COVID test on Christmas morning. I mean, again, it's a very hard thing to manage, but the last 6 months in Australia has been a bit of a mess. Been a bit of a mess.
I asked you about your Australia trip.
That too, back in LA, but no, it just didn't have that vibe that it always had.
Traveling is tough these days. There's no doubt about it. We've got to get over it, and hopefully that's something we're moving away. Look, Nikki, it's such a pleasure to have you on the Shaken and Stirred show. We're at that point now. I can't believe it's almost been an hour as we've whizzed through this. It's just gone flashed by, and it's like speed dating with Nicky Whelan. I love this. But I want to wrap it up with something we call last orders on the Shaken and Stirred show, which is a few simple questions to get to know you just a little bit better and have a little bit of a laugh. But the first question I have for you here is, if you could have a cocktail with any character from any movie, who would it be and what would the movie be?
This is so cheesy, but remember the movie Cocktail with Tom Cruise? And he was the bar. I love Tom Cruise. I want to be sitting at his bar having a drink with him in that movie. Is that cheesy?
It's scary, but because that sounds like a Mission Impossible for me. But I'm down. I'll take it. That's your decision. I thought I was your type of guy, and now I realize it's Tom Cruise, and I haven't got a bloody chance. Tom Cruise, though, it's perfect. Tom Cruise is only like 5'2", so he's perfect for you. You put some heels on, and it'll be great for you.
This is not true, Nigel. This was a long time ago. I love this movie, but when you say that, the first thing that comes to my mind is that. So the next question.
They're moving swiftly on. In the movie of your life, who would you like to have play you?
Can I break the rules really quickly here and get 3 actresses to play me?
Of course.
Okay, this is super self-indulgent, but I was thinking about this. So here's the thing. There are 3 Australian actresses, Cate Blanchett, Naomi Watts, and Rose Byrne. I fucking love all 3 of them. I'm obsessed with all of them. And I feel like I'm so that I feel like I need all 3 of their skills to cover my life story. So if that's possible, I would ask all 3 of them to play chunks or chapters of my life. All 3 of them are so different and so, they just cover everything. And I just feel like I would need that for my messy life.
I love the fact that this movie you're making now just became a sort of blockbuster, and we're going to have to sort of triple the budget because basically there's 3 of the biggest names in the business. But hey, I like it. I'm down. We can afford that. We're going to go for it. We're going to make this movie. It sounds fantastic. But on to the next question. It's one of my favorites. Fantasy dinner. If you're able to invite 3 guests, anyone you want, alive, dead or alive, can't be me. But anyone else, because I know you clearly would want to have me at that table, anyone other than me, you just imagine I'm already there, and Tom Cruise would be sitting on my lap.
Okay, my 3 favorite people at dinner. Okay, bear with me. The first one's a little standard. I need Jesus Christ there for a whole bunch of reasons. I got lots of questions. Please be quiet. They're interrupting us.
I love it. You've got an audience now of birds. I think that might actually be Tom Cruise.
It's actually a group of black crows. Do you know what a group of black crows are called?
Yes, I do. I used to know. What is it called again?
Murder.
A murder. That's right. Again, I said Tom Cruise. It's terrifying. Something happening back there.
The murder have just flown off. Okay. Jesus Christ is my first one. So many questions. Second, really randomly, don't know a great deal about her, but I read something recently and I'm like, fuck, I need to ask her so many questions. Cleopatra. I know it's really left of center. Let's not go into it. And the other one is I need someone sexy that's really intelligent and a little bit of a devil because we've got Jesus at the table. So I'm going to say Alan Watts. I feel like he's got some, I feel like he would be the one to ask the key questions, and he's a little bit sexy and devilish, and he would him interacting with Jesus Christ and then me and Cleopatra there. I just feel like there's a situation here.
There is definitely a situation. That is probably the most unusual group of people I've ever heard for that question ever. No one's ever gone that far. I don't think we've actually ever had Jesus Christ, funnily enough, ever named before.
Oh, I thought he would have been like a regular choice.
No one's ever said Jesus Christ. So there you go. There's a first. I'm not sure that his last name is in fact Christ. I think that he's just Jesus, who is the Christ, right? But so we'll have to look him up differently. But we'll get hold of him. I'll put my hotline to the Pope, and we'll see if he can just organise that. It's great. One more. What is your go-to drinking song? And someone like Aussies, I always have great drinking songs. So I've got to imagine you've got a pretty good one.
Remember Run to Paradise? Please don't make me sing. Oh my
I was
God.
going to say, you got to sing it. Come on.
Absolutely not. It's an Aussie song.
I don't remember it. You're going to have to sing it.
No, you only ever did it just for fun. You Run to Paradise. And it's such an Aussie drinking song. Just Google it, Run to Paradise. I can't remember the name of the band. Oh my goodness. But this is one of those ones where, when you're like, let's go back to the 90s when you're all in the Choir Boys.
Perfect. Gotcha.
You're still looking at me like, yeah, I don't know. But
I
that's
have
okay.
no idea. But I'm going to play it. It's going to appear on our playlist.
It's got that cheesy big chorus and everybody gets into it when they're drunk. I mean, it's a whole situation. So there you go. That's mine. Run to Paradise.
Final question. Nicky Whelan, shaken or stirred?
Well, shaken, of course.
D'accord. Why, of course?
Because as we've been discussing this whole time, there's nothing more beautiful than something that's really been shaken up, right? And then once the dust settles, I'm shaken, girl.
You are a shaker. Shaken and clearly not stirred. Nicky Whelan, new movie Hounds of War. When's that coming out?
So we're yet to film that. It got pushed because of COVID. It shoots in Malta, and fingers crossed that we will get into that very, very soon.
Fantastic. Amazing. Listen, congratulations on everything. Good luck in the year ahead. It's such a pleasure to talk to you now. I look forward to talking to you again soon and having a drink with you in person. So next time you come to New York, look me up and maybe we can do this in face to face.
Yes, please, Nigel. Thank you so much for having me, love. Thank you.
My pleasure. Everybody, this is Shaken and Stirred. We'll see you next week with a cocktail and a great conversation. Thanks so much. Cheers, everyone. Thank you very much for listening. That is Shaken and Stirred. We will be back next week with another podcast and another fantastic guest. And stay safe.
This podcast was produced and edited by Embassy Road.